Welcome to the ICS Explainer video for MYP Mathematics. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions to help us put this video together. What we're going to do with this video is going to focus on explaining the MYP Maths program in general, rather than specific questions about what we do at ICS. But please be assured that we're going to send out a frequently asked questions document with this video to answer all the questions that you put in the chats. So I'm really pleased today to have Mr Chou here, our head of mathematics at ICS, and we're going to do this as an interview. I'm going to ask James a few questions, and hopefully it'll give you a good insight into why the MYP Mathematics program is so special. So hi James.
Hello.
Hi. Do you want to say a little bit about your experience with the MYP and how many years you've been teaching?
My experience with MYP and DP, I would say is about 15 years. Yeah, 15, around that time. And it has been quite eye-opening for me, even as a learner, as a mathematician, and as an educator. So
okay,
there's a lot
great
to say.
So you know everything there is to know about the MYP.
No, the more you know, the more you know you don't know enough.
Okay, well that's a good place to start. So why don't you tell us about the main features of MYP Mathematics and particularly how it's different to the UK system?
Right. For MYP Math, I would say that it has a very interesting aspect of mathematics that's heavily emphasized, and that's the investigative nature of mathematics. Obviously, we have our assessment criteria. We have criterion A, B, C, and D, and each one focus on different aspect of math. And I think that's the biggest difference distinguish MYP Math from the UK system.
So if I was to walk into an MYP Mathematics classroom, would it look completely different to a British curriculum classroom?
Right. I say it would depends on the time the unit is taking place. At the end of the unit, we have our assessment, and depends on what the type of assessment we are preparing students for. If it's question B, then you will see a lot of practice of pattern recognitions, writing pattern as a formula, making predictions, and they will be manipulative. If it's question D, then you will see a lot of modeling. You will have real life situation of mathematics. Students have to read a lot of text, extract information, and solve problems. If you come in to observe the lesson, visit a lesson, it happened to be preparing for a routine, typical math test, then that would just look like the UK system exam preparation. So it depends on the moment you walk in.
Okay, so if it was a focus on criterion A, then it would look pretty similar to a UK classroom.
I would say so.
If it was a focus on a criteria B, C, or D, it might look a little different.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about those criteria. You mentioned there's 4 different criteria. Yes. Could you just go through those again, please?
Right. Criterion A is called knowing and understanding, and criterion B is investigating pattern. Now, criterion C is called communicating, and that's where the communicating of mathematics will happen in all the criteria. Criterion D will be often a longer question, has part A, B, C, D, and they're leading you up to something more complicated answer at the end. It always has a story to it. Yeah, it always has a story to it. For example, a manufacturer tries to package rolls of toilet paper, and there are different ways of packaging it. And the packaging material might be plastic. Well, as a eco-friendly company, you want to minimize the use of plastic. And the whole task could be based on that.
So just to recap, we've got 4 criteria.
Yeah.
The first criteria is knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, knowing and understanding. Yeah.
Which is typically just doing some maths.
Yeah.
Criterion B is finding patterns.
Investigating pattern, yeah.
Criterion C is communicating. Mathematics. And criterion D is
applying mathematics in real life context.
Okay, fantastic. Now, you said a lot there about the grades from 1 to 8.
Yes.
That's a little complicated sometimes for parents. So could you be able to give us a really brief description of what that means and how can parents use that to know how well their child is doing?
It's out of 8, and it has MYP descriptor. The level 7 and 8 will consist of a problem that's challenging in unfamiliar situations. Level 5, 6s would be challenging but familiar. Level 3 and 4 would be corresponding to complex problems, yeah? And then level 1 and 2 will be simple. For example, if you are at a level 3 and 4, then you are typically still consolidating a lot of the core contents. And in order for you to go beyond level 3 and 4, you might have to venture into challenging questions. In terms of the revision material, that would be more worthy of problems. Yeah. So it's going to go beyond a bit of routine practice there.
You're saying a level 3 and 4 is quite a basic level.
Yes.
Once
yes.
you get to a 5 and 6, then you're doing pretty well.
Yes.
Okay, so if a student's getting a level 7 and 8, that means that they're doing remarkably well?
I would say so, yes. Yes, yes.
I know parents who are used to the American system always panic if their children aren't getting very, very high grades all the time.
Oh.
But that isn't necessarily achievable in the MYP. Would you agree?
I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think that's necessarily a worry. Because as I mentioned, mathematics has different aspects. There's an aspect of pattern recognition in MYP. And some students are very remarkable in terms of applying math to solve real life problems. And there's always a balance because some students are just very strong in every area. So it really depends on the individual student and their learning need. And we will try to help those areas that needed a lot more improvement, obviously.
So we hear the words formative and summative a lot in the MYP.
Yes.
Can you tell us what those words mean?
Now, we have summative assessment, and those are the one will be taken into account when at the end of the semester, we have to give a semester grade. Now, semester grade consists of what a student got in criterion A, criterion B, criterion C, and criterion D. Within each criterion, for example, criterion A, you might have just one test in the topic. But leading up to that test, maybe the teacher and the student agree, let's do some little quizzes. And little quizzes is helping students to consolidate the knowledge and also benchmark how far we are from our targets. And the formative grade might appear on your managed pack. And when it comes to deciding, what the student should get for the criterion A grade, teacher will look at the formative test, and they will look at the summative as well. Summative is the main one, and they will look at the formative one as well. And they help the teacher to decide what's the most representative grade to award the students.
So formative tests is still important.
Oh, yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about the e-assessments that happen at the end of
Grade 10.
5?
Yes. E-assessment is a computerized exam. So that means student is going to be writing their solutions on the computer. And it's not just math, it's all the subject that involved in e-assessment. It's a lot more unpredictable. And it's also centered around the global context. A global context is different each year. And the kind of question might come up, the topics of the syllabus might come up, will be different. One big difference between DP exam and e-assessment is in DP exam, you will be able to find one question from every single topic. There are 5 topics, right? In e-assessment, there might be topics that don't show up, and that just make it harder to prepare. However, what I notice is that the e-assessment focuses a lot on transferable skills. And that's one thing that the MYP teacher is trying to focus on. Instead of content-driven, it's a lot more about the skill.
So you're assessing, as well as assessing how much maths they know, you're also assessing how able they are to use that maths.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Our grade 10 will be doing assessment in probability. And one of the discussion we have in class is think about probability questions you have been doing. Think about all the other topics you have learned, 6 to 9 to 10. What topic you think could be linked to probability? And then I have students put their hands up, say quadratics, linear, pattern, and then somebody say statistics. And then I start asking them, statistics, what aspect of statistics you think could be linked to probability, percentages, and randomness? And then they start thinking about, whenever we collect data, we summarize the data into human frequency curve, and then you got your probability coming out of that experiment. And it's that kind of skills that we try to bring out of the students Because as I said, e-assessment is quite unpredictable. And the type of connection of these different area of math could link together, it's there. You just need to explore it.
And that idea that it's deliberately unpredictable
Yes.
is why often in other tests, students will have questions that they're not familiar with.
Exactly. And it's those connections between different area of math will serve as a challenge and also as an excitement. It's a very interesting balance.
So lots of parents ask us about why we don't set according to ability in the MYP. Could you talk a little about that?
Right. There's an advantage and disadvantage of having a set class. In the context of screening students too early, like in the case of grade A, in some schools even earlier, you are creating an environment where students who don't get into the set one, they end up in a very isolated environment because the environment where students interact each other, they learn from each other. And if you don't provide an environment for them to interact, then certain group of students would be just left further behind. And I don't believe that's what MYP international curriculum represents. And so that's a disadvantage of that.
And then that's reflected in the fact, of course, that everyone has to do DP maths.
Exactly. Everybody has to take maths course.
So we can't leave anyone behind.
No.
So there is an extended maths course for grades 9 and 10. How should students decide whether that's the right option for them or not?
Right. Okay. In grade A, when it's approaching to the end of the grade A, there will be questions being asked by the student, by the family as well. Do you think extended program would be suitable for my child? It's a very valid question to ask. I would say depends on the learning style of the students. We have had many cases where students, their student performances are meeting the criteria. However, they decided not to be extended because they know the pace will be fast. And also they know that once the pace is fast, they won't have the time and space to consolidate their foundations. And one thing I keep bringing up again and again to parents and students is we're playing for the long game because grade 11, grade 12 is the year where you're gonna apply to university. You need to take a math, and math is a subject that built on layers and layers of foundations. What I would recommend to students is, it depends on your learning style. Certain pathway will be more appropriate for you to consolidate their foundations. Some students, they end up doing very well when they're in a highly pressurized environment like extended. Some able student, they might not perform that well in that kind of pressurized environment. So it really depends on the individual. And I always encourage parents to talk to their teacher because teachers are the person that day in and day out working with your child. They know what's the struggle they have. And their recommendation is actually very valuable.
Okay, right. So it's not as simple as thinking if you want to do higher level maths at DP, you need to do extended maths.
No. In our data analysis, we have enough data to convince ourselves that if you are a solid mathematics student coming from grade 10, regardless which set you come from, as long as you have solid foundation, both standard and extended will prepare you for the high level. And years after years, I'm more convinced that's the case.
And last question, there's two different options of DP. There's the
AA, the AI.
And that stands for?
Analysis and purchase, that's AA. Applications and interpretation, that's AI.
Great, I'm glad you remembered. So how would you advise students to choose between those two options?
Right. These two options are intimately connected to your university applications. It's crucial that the students speak to a university counselor, speak to Mr. Kuipers, our DP coordinator, and also their math teachers.
So simply put, if you were wanting to do a degree in engineering,
that's going to be AA.
And for AI, typically.
Let me take one step back. it's important to speak to university counselor, because some university do recognize AI high level. It's quite tricky because a different country, different Ministry of Education have their own way of validating courses. Typically, I would say most people who graduate from our AA high level, who gone into engineering, architect, they need AA high level. I have some students who get into School of Economics, London. They need AA high level, but the same type of program in other school in other country might not need AA high level. So that's why it's crucial to talk to university council.
Okay, well, I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time,
Thank you.
James. And thank you. Bye-bye.